Hello, Mordechai.
Hello, how are you doing? Sorry, I'm gonna have a pencil. Yeah, you have the actual.
Okay. As we usually do, we speak on the Pasha of the week. The Pasha Yois of the week, Pashas Bahar and Chokoisai. And we'll see how much we can cover and what we can touch on. The first thing in Pashas Bahar, which you're surely aware of, is the mitzvah of Shemitah. That even though Hashem said that Eden have to go to Eretz Yisrael, because there were many of the Eden that didn't want to go to Eretz Yisrael, they wanted to stay in the desert and learn Torah a whole day. As you will find later on in Pasha Shlach, a few weeks later, you'll see there was a whole big tragedy that happened. Hashem, as Chassidus explains, wanted that Eden should go to Eretz Yisrael, should plant, should establish a normal society, so to speak. And yet, at the same time, he says that you can only plant the land 6 years. Then on the 7th year, you have to stop. You have to let the land barren. And we have the same thing every week, as a matter of fact. You're only allowed to do work 6 days. Shabbos is the 7th day, which we have to abstain from any kind of worldly activity. This is telling us, this is kind of directing our thoughts sort of in two opposite directions. On the one hand, you have to do work, and you should not rely on miracles. On the other hand, come the 7th year, the Torah says you should rely on miracles. It says in the Pasha that if you'll be concerned, you learned this already, I'm sure, if you'll be concerned, what are we going to eat on the 7th year? I'm promising you that you'll have a bracha, and the 6th year will produce enough for 3 years. We ought to reflect on this and understand that everything in the Torah directs us towards a proper and correct experience of life and view of life. I'll come back to that in a moment. Further down, we'll learn about Yovel. Yovel is the 50th year, which is the year after the 7th Shemitah, 50th year, 7 times 7, and then the 50th year. That becomes another year of Shemitah, essentially. And then furthermore, everything reverts back to its original state. All the fields that were sold in the middle go back to the original owner. And the Torah tells us, because of the principle of Yovel, our real estate dealings assume a totally different order, prerogatives, because you can't sell land indefinitely. The sale of land is essentially a lease, because after, when Yovel comes, it goes back to the owner. And the Torah states clearly, I want you to know that you are my guest, essentially. The land belongs to me, Hashem says. You're my guest. You don't own any property outright. You own property by my graces, because I let you have it. And therefore, when you're selling your property, you're selling it only for a given number of years, and therefore you have to calculate the proper price. And then furthermore, even after you sold the land, if the original owner wants to buy it back, because now he has the means to buy it back, you have to sell it back to him. You can't go hold it back. After 2 years, the first 2 years is the only thing that you have. After 2 years, you're forced to give it back to him. This is Yosef. I'm sure you all get to know him. Wow. So all this kind of puts a paradoxical, everybody knows what paradoxical means? Paradoxical, situation. Is it mine or is it not mine? Are we supposed to work the land or are we not supposed to own the land? Essentially, the Torah is teaching us an overall, a very general principle how we are to view, how we are to relate to the world we live in. This applies to the land and applies to our general attitude in life. Even here in Yeshiva, in learning, as we will discuss. For 6 years, we have to work the land, which means that seemingly, apparently, we are living off the land. The land produces the produce, and this is what we eat, and this is what gives us our sustenance. Comes a 7th year, and we don't have land. We don't touch it. And what do we live on? We live on what's called aftergrowth. Either on what we saved off from the previous years, or aftergrowth. Aftergrowth is when that which grows from the land automatically. Because grains, as you're harvesting, grains fall down on the ground, and then the next year they grow out. Shemitah, you're allowed to eat the produce. You're not allowed to work the land, but that which is produced, you're allowed to eat it. And this teaches us, it trains us to recognize in our lives that even while we are working the land and the land produces, we should remember that we are not really relying on the land. It isn't the land, it isn't our work that gives us sustenance. It is Hashem's bracha. This is, generally speaking, a kind of a difficult question. And people always ask, which is it? Do you have to rely on Hashem, or are you supposed to do things for yourself? And the Torah tells us the answer is, you're supposed to do what you can do, and know that if you're successful, it's because Hashem is Hashem's bracha. And the proof of it is the 7th year. For the 7th year, you don't even produce, you don't even grow the land. And then furthermore, the Torah tells us, when Yovel comes, you have to remember who is the true owner of the land. You have to remember that you are all guests by Hashem. That's what the Torah says. You're all guests. This translates for us here, when we're here to learn Torah, and we have to work hard to learn Torah. There's no question about it. And sometimes we may become kind of disappointed, a little bit disillusioned sometimes. We have to remember like this. Disappointed, losing hope. I worked so hard and I don't have it. We have to understand like this. On our own, we really cannot accomplish very much. Even during the 6 days that we are allowed to till the land, if we remember that this land belongs to Hashem, then the land will produce. If we think it is our land, then it's going to fail. The next Pasha, Pasha's Bechukoisai, the end of Pasha Bechukoisai, the biggest chunk of Pasha Bechukoisai, the second half, is all the Toichacha. The Toichacha is called reprimand. The Toichacha is a very harsh retribution, a very harsh reprimand that Hashem is giving Eden, warning them that if they don't keep the Torah, very bad things can happen. And in Mitzvah, when you learn it, you will see that the Torah clearly states, it says why were you thrown out of Eretz Yisrael? Why were you thrown into Golus and out of Eretz Yisrael? Because you didn't keep the Shemitas. That's what it says. Because he didn't keep the Shemitas, that's why you were thrown out of Eretz Yisrael. Shemitas and Yovel. And Rashi over there makes a calculation, and he shows that the 70 years that Eden were in Golus, in the first Golus, in Babylonian Golus, 70 years, were counted for the 70 Shemitas in Yovel that Eden transgressed. This is Shemitah in Yovel, and it encompasses our entire life, essentially. Like I said before, when you're plowing the land, you have to remember it's Hashem's land. And that's when the land produces, and that's when it produces for the 7th year automatically. The same thing comes back to us when one learns Torah. We have to understand that yes, indeed, we have to work hard, we have to learn. Sometimes we have to repeat something multiple times, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So it seems that I'm getting this learning because I worked on it. At the same time, we have to also recognize, and we have to remember, that we have a gift from Hashem. We have a gift from Hashem of our seichel. Hashem gave us seichel. He gave us the intellect. And knowing that it's Hashem's gift, and then treasuring it. You know what treasuring is? Means valuing it, respecting it, understanding that this is something which is a gift from Hashem, that we have to use for the proper thing. And then we go to learn Torah with this special gift. That's when we become successful. We have to understand that the capacity for learning Torah is not what we call a natural capacity. This is the capacity that Hashem has blessed us with, and Hashem is involved in our success. So this is the teaching of Shemitah and Yovel, as far as we are concerned. If we get, like I said, disappointed, we have to overcome that, knowing that the koyach, the ability for us to learn, is something which Hashem has given us. And if we have not made it yet, we have not broken through yet, it is only because we still have to open it up. Our labor and our work, what we have to work, is to find the treasure. The treasure is what do you say? Zakrovich? Zakrovich is called a treasure. Okay, that's covered up. Okay. It's like, we spoke about it one before, it's like when the person is digging for water, want to find water, a well. So digging itself does not produce the water. If there is no water under the ground, he won't bring out water because you dig. You bring out the water because there is water in there. But without digging, it's not going to come up. So when we learn, without learning, our seichel is going to be sleeping. It's going to be dormant. When we learn hard, at first it is still hidden, but eventually we can get to it and bring it out over time, over time and over much effort. So we always have to remember, the land is Hashem's. Hashem gave us all the capability that we need to produce the produce and to be successful. But we have to till the land. We have to work it. And when we work it, then it's Hashem's bracha that brings it out. In the dinim of Yovel, so much for this, we'll go to something else. In the dinim of Yovel, basically the din of Yovel is like this, that when it comes the 50th year, everything reverts back to its original owner. All land reverts back to its owner, except for one thing. If you own a house in a walled-in city, that does not go back. If someone owns a house and he sells it in a walled-in city, that doesn't go back.
What's the difference?
Huh?
What's the difference between this case and another case?
Yeah, well, that's right. I'm saying it's a very interesting thing. So, you can imagine there are many things said about this in Yovel. Yovel is a very big principle in Torah. And but the Orechema, the walled-in city and all that. I want to speak not just drushes, but only that which kind of gives us an understanding of something that gives us an understanding of ourselves. The difference between the walled-in city and the fields that do go back, Yovel and his house that doesn't go back, is that the fields are made to work in, to produce, to produce fruit and produce. In other words, this is made for sustenance. The walled-in city, the house in the walled-in city, is not made for sustenance, it's made for living quarters, for a person to live in. The Gemara says, and Chassidus builds a lot around this and explains this, speaks about it a lot. Gemara says, Odom she'ein loi bayis ein loi odom. That a person that does not have a house or a home is not a person. It's a very, very sharp saying. A person who doesn't have a home is not a person.
Where's that from?
Huh?
Where's that from?
I'll tell you the truth. I have it from the Mimer. But you're right, I should find it. It's a shame. Odom she'ein bayis ein loi odom. What does that mean? We are well aware of all the things that we have to do. We have to make brachas, we have to do mitzvahs, we have to all throughout the day we have something to do. In addition, and overall, of everything above all that we do, there is an overwhelming principle, and that is that all the things that we do, we say that if a person does a mitzvah, he gets a reward. If Chas v'Shalom does an aveira, he can get punished. So these are all things, the reward and punishment, this is all a way to speak to our Yetzer Hara. But the real thing, the significance to us for doing the right thing and not doing the wrong thing is the fact as to who we are. We are human beings, and primarily we are Yidden. And that itself gives us a complete perspective. We have to do that which is right. We have to do productive things, positive things, respectful things, and then we don't want to do anything else. In other words, this is a principle that describes who we are. It's not just a question of giving us a reward. The Rebbe spoke about, and I'm sure you're aware, that the 10 Mifzoim, one of the Mifzoim that the Rebbe came out with, is what's called Bayis Molish Sforim, a house full of Sforim. So I remember someone once asked me, I don't understand why you need to buy books. Any book that I want, I can go into the library, borrow it, learn it, and give it back. And the Rebbe said, no, you have to own Sforim. Because owning a Sefer is more than just knowing it or learning it. The Rebbe even he instructed that every child should have his and her own Siddur and her own Pushka. Because Torah mitzvahs are not just what we do. Torah mitzvahs is what describes who we are. Like we spoke one time, many times, I always use this as an illustration, I don't know if everybody was there, that Everybody knows that you have to eat with a fork and spoon. Right, Chaim Tzvi? You don't know that?
Some people don't.
Everybody knows that. The reason we have to eat with a fork and spoon and not put our face into the plate and eat it like a cat is not because it's convenient and because it's going to keep our face and clothes clean. It's because we are human beings. Because of who we are. And out of self-respect, out of respect of who we are, we can't eat any other way. This is the simplest illustration. To do right and not to do wrong is not just a question of reward and punishment. It is a description of who and what we are. What we do varies. What varies means it changes, sometimes more, sometimes less. Who we are does not change. That does not change. This is steady, this is constant. The Gemara says, Afal pi shechot Yisrael, that a Yid is a Yid, even chas v'sholom if he did a sin. It doesn't change who we are. What we do, surely we have to learn to do the right thing. Just like a child has to learn to eat with a fork and spoon. And it takes years until he learns it. And sometimes it takes more than years. But so we have to distinguish, and this is important, we have to distinguish between what we do and who we are. And if we recognize truly who we are, then to learn to do what we need to do becomes much, much more meaningful and much more easy. Without recognizing who we are, everything that we have to do is a burden. Our Rebbe once spoke early on, in the early years in the 60s, the Rebbe said the following. The Rebbe said, if a Yid looks at his neighbors, his non-Jewish neighbors, and he sees how they behave, and he says to himself, why can't I do the same as they? Why can't I do the same as they? So the Rebbe says, all he has to do is reflect where they come from or where he comes from. And the Rebbe said, put it this way, that at the time when the neighbors, the non-Jewish neighbors' grandfather was hunting and eating raw human flesh, my grandfather was going around the world teaching the world about God. So I'm made of a different stuff. I can't compare to my neighbor. It's important for a person to understand and to know who he is. And to know that everyone has a home. Everybody has to have a place in this world. We are guests by Hashem, as we said before, but we are guests only on the land that we have to work on. But in the house that we live in, this is ours. This Hashem gave to us. Because that is our reality. This is what puts us in the world. And this defines who we are. Everyone came to this world to do a shlichus, to do a mission, to accomplish something. In order to accomplish, just like a shliach from the Rebbe, a shliach who goes to Ukraine. You can't be a shliach in Ukraine and live in New York. If you want to be a shliach in Ukraine, you have to move there. You have to learn the language. You have to live among the people. And then you can be a shliach and do your work. If you're a stranger and you don't become a resident there, you can't accomplish anything. A resident who lives there, somebody who lives there, you can't accomplish anything. Mekah Shlichus is not the same. Mekah Shlichus is only an alert and only an excitement. It doesn't really put people in it doesn't really take responsibility for the people that you meet. You give them a little bit of excitement and encouragement, and then hopefully they'll pursue it on their own. But to actually change the world, you have to be there. In order for us to be shluchim, Hashem shluchim in this world, we have to have a place in the world. We have to know that we belong here and we have what to do. And this is the difference. You ask what's the difference between the house or Bote Orichema in the walled-in city where we live and the fields that we work on. What we work, that's a transitory, that changes. Sometimes I work in this field, sometimes I work in this field. For temporary it's mine, and then it goes back to somebody else. But everyone has to have a place that defines, and he belongs in this world, and he has a job to do. This is something which is permanent. None of us here own homes. We're all yeshiva bachar. The pertinence, how this translates for us, is not in terms of owning homes. How this translates for us is to really recognize that our job here, even though we are bachrim, we don't have responsibility to anyone. What we do today, tomorrow may do something else. It seems that it's not so important. You have to understand that it is important, and it is very important. Each one is extremely significant. Significant. Important. Huh? Each one is a shliach from the Meibashn in this world, and he has a place here, and he has a responsibility here, not only for himself, at first for himself to learn how to do it, and then for his part in the world. This does not change. This is not transitory. It doesn't change from moment to moment. Even in Eretz Yisrael, where Hashem declares, you should all know that you are my guest, and it all belongs to me. And you don't get settled in one place, you buy and sell, and then it goes back to where it started from. There's one exception. That the dwelling place where you live, those cities that are dedicated for living, that is steady, that is permanent. Because this is what establishes our reality. We must not take ourselves lightly. What lightly means? You must never make chas v'sholom fun of ourselves, belittle ourselves. You have to understand that our time and our effort and our work is very important. Doesn't mean that we have to go around with serious faces, but it means that when we have to do things, even though we're not going to get fired from our job, we have to be disciplined, you have to be on time, you have to know that time is precious. Our time is precious. Because we are here for real. We have a real shlichus, a real place in this world.
Is there anything in the fact that only houses within walled cities in the time of Yeshua are those which they stay by whoever purchases them, but it's outside of walled city, also it's also like a field, I guess. It goes back again, right?
Right. Clearly, there's more to it, and the main thing is that it is, we could say that this is symbolic of the land itself. This is the walled city which is meant that way. But nevertheless, in terms of the hera that it gives a person, it's true even now that there is no such thing as Yovel altogether. Yovel applied only a very short time in our history. Because Yovel applies only when all Jews live in Eretz Yisrael. And this was only during the time of the first Beis Hamikdash. After that, it never was again. Even after Eden came back from Golus and second Beis Hamikdash, they were not all in Eretz Yisrael. So Yovel didn't apply only for 400 years approximately. Maybe 700, depends how you count it. When a person contemplates, what contemplates means, he considers, he thinks, what should I do? What's important for me to do? What's beneficial? And there are two views. On the one hand, Baruch Hashem, you know the right thing and so forth, but I want to elaborate on it and be clear. When a person contemplates what's more beneficial, he says, look, if I have a field and I can work on it, I can produce produce, I can sell it, I can become wealthy, I can have what to eat. If I don't have a house to live, if I have money, I can always live in a hotel. Wherever I go, I can live in a hotel. I don't need this place. When we consider which direction we should go in terms of what we should, where we should occupy ourselves with, and where we should put our effort and focus. There is always the lure, the excitement that, I can make money, I can be accomplished. In all of these instances, when a person reflects in that vein, in that line, he has to always remember that at the same time he has to consider not just what am I doing and how beneficial it is what I do, but who am I, and what does it do in terms of defining who I am? Everything that a person does has to relate first and foremost to who am I? Am I for real? I can make money, but it's insignificant because I don't know who I am. The first thing is to have a clear and solid identification, knowing who I am. To have a house in a walled-in city, not an open field, a walled-in city. Something that doesn't allow me to change, doesn't allow me to fly around. It gives me a clear picture, a clear definition of who I am. From there I can choose what is more appropriate for me to do according to my talent, according to my opportunities, and so forth. But never to lose that walled-in city, the house in the walled-in city, that you can't lose. If you lose it, chas v'shalom, it never comes back. If you sell a house in the walled-in city, it doesn't come back. You understand? You can't give yourself up. This is the mistake that many people never do. They think that by doing and being successful, this takes the place of being able to relate to oneself, of knowing who I am. And it doesn't. Not only it doesn't, it's counterproductive. The first thing a Yid has to know is, I'm a Yid. Whether I have a lot of money, a little money, I'm successful, unsuccessful, that's completely secondary. I live in a walled-in city. I'm solid. I can't be displaced. My place is solid forever. And then, of course, he has to do what he has to do. With Shemitah and Yovel and everything else. We can't undersell us. We can't underestimate the meaning of us being solidly placed in the world. Maybe we should matzliach, each one of you, each one of us, should find ourselves, not be groping in the dark, know clearly who I am, and that this knowledge should give us the strength, to lead us in the right way. Not to short sell myself because I have a lure. A lure means something enticing me, something calling me to enjoy this and enjoy that. At the price of selling short yourself, of losing self-ID, self-identification of who I am, of losing the house in the walled-in city. You can imagine a house in the walled-in city is worth a lot of money. You can sell it and buy a lot of fields. But that's a very, very serious error, because you lose a solid place. You understand the emotion of all this? With this approach, Hashem's help, each one of us will be successful, be strong, will be solidly put with both feet on the ground, and retain. What retain means remember what we learn. Because we are solidly put, we can remember. If we are floating around, that itself makes us forget what we learn. One day I'm Moshe, the next day I'm Yankel. And then Moshe doesn't remember what Yankel learned, Yankel doesn't remember what Yosha learned. We have to be solid. This is where the bracha comes, and this is where our produce grows, and this way we ultimately build Eretz Yisrael, as it says, Machdo Eretz Yisrael. We make Eretz Yisrael right here in our own lives. Tzlach.
I had a few days to contemplate some of the things you said. Along with that, I looked at other possibilities myself, which didn't. I ended up concluding that there's not